Hello and welcome to Scottish Self-Build and Renovation. My name is Gavin Esselmont. I am your host for this evening. I hope you've had a great weekend. It's been a bit hit and miss in terms of the weather, but it's looking quite sunny now in Aberdeen, so fingers crossed it holds for next weekend. If you have any questions during this programme, please post your question or comments in the feed on the channel you're watching. We'll get to those and we'll pick them up at the end. This programme is being recorded and will be made available across all our social media channels, our website and our podcast channels as well on Amazon and Spotify. So if you break out halfway through this programme, you can watch it again after. So I am joined today by Hamish Malcolm of Munro and Noble Financial Services. Good evening, Hamish.
Evening, Gavin. Thanks for having me on, sir.
Evening. How are you doing? You had a rushed trip to the studio.
Yes, yeah, always good to have a bit of adrenaline from technology before kicking off. But yeah, all good, sir. All good.
Good. No, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and you know, your experience, and you've got some war stories you're going to be telling us of tonight, I think.
Yeah, I suppose I've been involved in self-builds and construction projects some stage or other, Gavin, for almost 20 years, probably more than 20 years. I mean, at the end of the day, I suppose the basics of buying a plot of land and putting a house on it and living in it thereafter has never really changed, but there's been quite a lot of change in finance and options and banks in 20 years. And yeah, it's just looking for ways that work with people, trying to keep them straight and narrow, and not really having any favourite lenders. I don't think it's just the best lender for that particular client. You've got to be pretty flexible, especially these days, I think, you know.
Of course, yeah, and I guess certainly with COVID and the various kind of economic challenges we've had over the last kind of 5-6 years, and probably will continue. You must have seen it all.
Well, I suppose having lived through the banking crisis of 08-09, that's almost looking like a bit of a warm-up act for what we're going through just now, true enough. So yeah, I guess about managing client expectations, managing timescales. We've seen a lot of variety of timescales with lenders this last couple of months. And I think, to be fair, it's been very evident which lenders you can rely on for your contacts, which ones have kind of gone missing for a period of time. And yeah, just helping clients with that experience get to the end result for them as painlessly as possible.
Yeah, no, I think it's exciting though. I think you know, it's easy to focus on the scary parts of this, but I think we need to stay focused on this is exciting. This is about building something of your dreams and really taking the time out to do it right. So there's obviously a place for excitement and passion, but as we were talking yesterday, we had a little chat yesterday to understand, you know, it really is a case of staying grounded and doing the basics, and one of the most important parts of a self-build is making sure that finance is in place before you even start. And I think, again, you've had various kind of war stories again, where you've seen that kind of crumble, and it's all too easy, especially in these sort of climates. You just don't know what's coming your way. So if you put the foresight into understanding where you're positioned financially, then hopefully everything else slots into place thereafter.
Yes, certainly, Gavin. I mean, I think if people listening only take one takeaway from the whole session, it is kind of do the preparation and certainly look before you leap. It is kind of sobering for an advisor when you're sitting in front of a client who has put, in some cases, a life savings into the purchase of a plot of land, and they've just assumed this is going to scoosh. Self-build's easy. They're going to fit exactly the parameters for lenders, and it is about keeping a calm nerve when you've actually tell them that really. So in the same way, you build a house from the foundations up. In terms of self-build project, the foundations is the finance, unless you're a cash buyer for not only the land but the build cost as well, which is pretty rare. That's a big chunk of money. It's more than likely you're going to need some sort of financing at some point in the project. So it's really about trying to get people in for an early chat. Clearly, there's been a lot of change in the last 2-3 months with lenders, and one of the major Scottish self-build lenders did come out of the market for about 6 weeks.
Okay.
So, always good to have a chat ahead of time. I don't think you can go away and leave it, leave your project, leave the financing for 6 months and come back and just assume nothing will change with that lender. So, communication, getting a sense check up front, either from a broker or a lender directly, that you fit their little boxes and can tick all the criteria. But yeah, definitely don't just charge in, throw some money down for a plot of land and then hope for the best later on.
Yeah. So what would you say are the biggest mistakes that people have made in a self-build? That could be, I guess, at the start, at the beginning, after. Is there anything that kind of springs to mind that you could provide as advice?
Yeah, again, in terms of cautionary tales, that just does happen. People would just buy the land and have not given any forethought of what the self-build options are. So, if for any reason you're quirky, maybe you're not paid in UK sterling, your job doesn't neatly fit into P60 territory, maybe you've only been self-employed for a year. These are all things that won't be impossible, but they're going to narrow your options down for self-build. There are only about, say, 9, probably 10 at push self-build options available for clients in Scotland. So you don't want to be in a position where you've only got 3 to start with, and then maybe by buying the land up front, you've kind of rolled yourself out of one of those. Possibly even beyond that, and I do appreciate intuitively it may sound like a reasonable course of action for people that they want to buy the land and they've got a bit of money to pay for the first couple of stages of the build. Counterintuitive or whatever, that actually reduces your lending options.
And so is there anything
even though you're running with your own cash and you've got your own money to get? I was just going to say, really, lenders, if they're going to come in even at the tail end of a project or halfway through, they want to have somebody signing it off all the way through. So there's a QS appointed architect, whatever it may be. Lenders get very nervous if you've actually got the house half finished and they've not had somebody overseeing the funds going in the first couple of stages, even though you're doing it with your own money.
So once you've I guess found the right lender, you're underway. Are there further things that folks should or that folk do that could make things tricky for them?
Yeah, well, I suppose keeping the budget is an easy thing. Easier said than actually doing in person. There's kind of a gallows humour kind of joke for those of us involved in self-builds. There's 2 types of self-builds: one that runs over time and over budget, and then the other type that run way over time and way over budget. So if something does happen, whether it's you, the developer, whatever it is, it's always good to shout out to the lender early. We're going beyond what we think here. Don't just bottle it all up and then give it to them on the last day. It's really just being mindful that in almost all self-build processes, there will be an end summing up, if you like, before you go off the self-build process and onto your 2-year fixed rate or 5-year fixed rate, where it's going to be. So if anybody's planning to changing job during the self-build process, that does happen. Always better to confirm with the lender before you change that you still fit into their criteria. Whether you're changing from a job with a high basic to something with a lower basic and more commission and overtime, you might be going from a salaried basis on something that's a bit more freelance. Nothing wrong with these things at all, but not all lenders view them the same way. Yeah. So if you're looking to make that change, and you can make that change during the build stage, always better to check with a lender they're still cool with that.
I guess so any changes factors that kick in that aren't planned. I guess with COVID, very topical in terms of redundancies, furloughed pay, various kind of scenarios that can affect your lending criteria. I suppose the policy is to be honest with your lender. So if you have the lender already agreed, it's best not to hide these things and actually be upfront and honest.
Yeah, you're right, Gavin. One would hope, with especially with something like COVID, if somebody's lost their job, if the house is 3/4 finished, you would certainly think the best course of action for all parties is let's get the house finished, even if it needs to sit in an interest-only period or even a payment holiday once it's finished before they convert to mortgage. That's got to be better than leaving the house half finished. The contractors are probably going to go off-site. How quick can you get them back on again? But for the letter of the law, you're in breach if there's material change to your income and you've not prepared it to lender. You're in breach. So in terms of any change of income, absolutely, you've got to just play that, with a straight bat all the way through the build stage. And in terms of commitments, I've seen it go both ways actually. I've seen people get the first few stages done and they're ahead of budget, they've saved some money, and maybe on Saturday afternoon they were going down to get the car serviced. 2 hours later they come out, the car salesman's on top of their game, they come out with a new car.
Yeah.
Again, new financial commitment. You know yourself, kind of nice, so it's easy done. So again, if you've now got a new commitment than you had beforehand, that could cause you a problem at the end of the 6, 12, 9 months, whatever it's going to be for the convert to the end mortgage. And the converse of that, I suppose, is if the budget has gone adrift and the kitty of cash that you maybe had to do all the furnishings, all the nice stuff inside, if that cash is gone, people might just decide they're going to take some buy now, pay in 12 months type arrangements. Again, that's going to be viewed as a financial commitment from the lender. So you just need to sense check that you still hit their numbers at the end of the mortgage. And certainly don't go racking up on credit cards. That's even tougher to get right, to be honest with you.
I guess
so these are almost, you might call them.
I guess that also applies to when you're planning. I mean, if you're maybe your self-build project or your major renovation project is kind of two years out, then you've obviously got time that you can get planning financially, because it's not just about the build, it's obviously making sure that you do a health check in your own financial situation to make sure that you've got the best possible case to agree a good mortgage at the start, because obviously you've got the process and then you've got the remortgaging at the end. So all these things sometimes I believe that can be thought out and planned at the start. Could that be a problem without you even doing it? That new car, that interest-free furniture, all these things have an impact on your lending criteria. All right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yep. Are you okay?
And it's just about keeping that's correct. All good, yeah.
Yeah, good. So just a question on lenders. So obviously there's various lenders available. Probably not as many as the traditional kind of purchase kind of mortgage lenders, but for a self-build lender, different criteria on house types. Is there any kind of restrictions on, for example, I don't know, kind of flat roofs or maybe non-traditional construction?
Yeah, there certainly is, Gavin. I mean, in terms of what you might call really eco-friendly houses with not a lot of brick, a lot of grass, and a lot of timber going on, there's certainly some lenders who are more specialised towards that, and will actually reward a better SAP rating with a better interest rate. Certainly, if I'm sitting with a client and we're talking about self-builds, if they're mentioning anything about non-traditional construction or flat roofs, for example, some really stunning flat roofs going about, that's certainly getting me on my toes from day one, and to say, let's just sense check in with lender that they're cool with the type of house you're going to buy. I don't think you can assume anything there. Bear in mind, there's only about 9 or 10 options to begin with. If you're looking to build something a little bit just off-piste, then I would definitely check that with the lender at the same time as checking your income and your commitments, all the kind of routine stuff.
And does that also apply if you make changes in the build? So once you have your planning in place, you're on the road to completion, you have a change in heart, you maybe want to change something from a pitch to a flat roof. Is that something, again, you'd probably be best to go to the lender and just be upfront and honest in terms of that change that's been made? Because it could be fundamental and that could have an impact on your lending criteria.
Yeah, I mean, there's no right or wrong, Gavin. Actually, I don't have any favourites. I think we used 23 different lenders last year, so we're quite a wide spread. We're not in anybody's kind of pocket for giving them all our business. Type of construction, lenders have their own ideas, and I've been some really stunning houses that we couldn't get mortgaged or couldn't get with the first choice mortgage lender because they're deemed as non-traditional. Let's say flat roofs. I've got an example of that. Again, I think people just perceive the numbers are okay. They've looked at my income, they've looked at my accounts, and numbers are all okay. We're going to build a fantastic house, but bear in mind you only have quite a small section of lenders to begin with. You don't want to go back and just present them with this on the last sign off.
Yeah.
That's going to be a bit exciting for all the parties around that conversation.
Okay, cool. That's good. That's good to know, because the temptation is to, it is your dream home at the end of the day, and albeit you'd like to try and get everything done and completed at the start of the planning process. As ever, I know I'm the worst culprit for this, is to make changes because you think it's an easy thing to do. But as Duncan Robson said in the last webinar, you really don't want to be doing that. It's tempting, but sometimes it just kind of lands you into hot water, not just from a design and a construction perspective, but clearly now we understand that it can actually be a financial issue as well. So good to know. So at the end of the build, obviously we're running towards the completion date. What options would we have with the mortgage then? I mean, you've got a mortgage at the start. Is there options to potentially flip that out for another structure?
Yeah, certainly the mainstream self-builders that people will be more aware of, not many in the high street, true enough, but some of the names that people would find in some of the search engines or comparison websites, their proposition is they want to lend you through the build stage, on stage payments, and then at the end of it, so like, what rates have we got, what options? And like the 2-year fixed rate, 5-year fixed rate, there'll be a few options there. There are a couple who allow you to then just remortgage away. I think intuitively, as an ex-bank Gavin, I always kind of feel, look, if this lender here helped us through the scary bit of the actual stage payments, I mean, they should be rewarded. You should stay on the books for them for a while. But it's not always the case. And although you should end up with a fantastic house and relatively low loan to value at the end of it, the products that naturally flow from a self-built mortgage, that's rarely the cheapest you'll get in the marketplace. So again, that's something we'd always look at. You might be doing your cost comparison at the start of the project on lender 1 to lender B or lender 2. It may be a cheaper option to go through the build stage with the first lender, but they might keep you in, retain you for a longer period on a higher rate at the end of it. So I think a lot of people, when they're doing this themselves, might just focus on the 9 to 12-month build stage and then forget about the fact they might be then committed to that lender for a further 2 years, paying an extra percent, 1.25% at the end of it. So it's all about, first of all, you get the house built first of all, that's a given. But I always try and look a step ahead. What does life look like when you come to the end of this? How long you committed in for? What does that rate look like? Because once you've got the house finished, you would have a far wider choice of mortgage options at that point than the initial 9 or 10 full lender stage payments. So it is something worth looking at, definitely, how long you're committed in that perhaps higher rate at the end.
And then John Murray's come up with an interesting question. He's obviously saying, what happens if you actually run over budget? So if you've got a lending criteria for a certain budget, it could be that you have an issue with overspend and you're slightly out of kilter with what you've got approval for. I mean, so he's jokingly said, they certainly didn't run to budget, and it'd be quite interesting to understand what the lender's opinion would that be. Or would that be a case of remortgaging, or would it be a case of you having to put more money in, or trying to come back into budget towards the end of the project? I mean, how do you deal with these sorts of things?
Yeah, well, the lenders will all have, I suppose, a couple of criteria. They'll certainly all have a maximum loan to value. So again, now this is where, again, I've been involved in so many of these projects. Sometimes you can spend X amount on the house and it won't necessarily add X amount onto valuation, whether it's soft furnishings or internals, whatever it may be. So the lenders will be governed by two things, and I've never seen them really move on this, is what's the loan to value you can be at the end of it, and ultimately what's your affordability. So again, that's where I talked about the pull and push of changing income, changing commitments during the build stage. I think you would get to a certain point and lenders saying, for a self-build, that's our maximum, but it's 85%. That's probably as high as you get, really. Anything beyond that, they would simply say, right, well, that's as far as we're going, and the client would have to take personal loan, something of that sort, which is never going to be as cheap as a mortgage. So yeah, budget's tricky, and you need to shout out as early as possible if you think we're going over budget, and then try and rein it into some future point. Build the garage next year, perhaps.
It's all the nice shiny things at the end of the project that you really want to be spending money on, like the kitchen, for example, or the bathroom. So I guess it's trying to get it right at the start, and then you know, 'cause you don't want to be raining in on the nice shiny things.
Correct. Yeah, very true.
Yeah, so no, it's and just you talked there about land. It's interesting to understand how people come by land. You know, it may be that they're gifted land, or it may be that they're purchasing land and having to borrow just to get the land, or maybe their family owns land next to the plot and they can ultimately build on that. I mean, does that have an impact on lending criteria? I mean, how do the mortgage providers see that? Does that help the whole kind of application process?
Yeah, in the main it does. Most lenders will accept the value of the land you've been gifted as part of your contribution. So you know, obviously that's going to help a lot. I mean, your land's not getting cheaper, that's for sure. There's one exception to that, and it's one of the lenders, probably one of the highest profile lenders, who just have their own rule. They will not lend on a self-build if either you own the plot next door or members of close family own the plot next door. I've never really figured out why that is, but it just is. So it's a question we ask very early on our fact find, because that's going to narrow down your options at the very start. But yeah, if people have got land, been gifted land, it's probably going up in value. If they got it pre-planning, they've taken it through planning, then most lenders will look at the valuation with the planning in place and say, well, that's your contribution. So in the main it could work, but let's say there's one caveat to that. One lender just doesn't like that scenario of having family land next door to you, if you like. So again, that's just where we can save clients time and weeks of frustration going down a path that ends up as a rabbit hole, you know.
And one of the temptations is to do the work yourself. You know, it may be that you're a joiner, you're a sparky, or you know, you've got a trade behind you, and rather than contracting out parts of the build, you may actually want to do it yourself. Does that impact the lending?
I think you just need to present it right way, really. Clearly, in that scenario, there's not going to be an NHBC builder, so a lender would look for an architect or a QS to sign it off. That architect QS has to have certain amounts of PI and be accredited to lender satisfaction. I mean, I've seen it work. We're working a case like that just now. A couple of things to look out for. If you're kind of going on mates rates, for want of a better expression, you just need to be mindful of what your cost per square metre is working out at. Some lenders have de minimis levels. Beyond that, they don't think it's actually been built properly. Probably is, but you know, there might be a bit of trade-off from different guys in the trades. You know, again, I've seen it done before. If it's mates rates, all the mates need to be fully committed. So if there's 5 different guys or girls involved in a project, if one's doing it at the weekend and the rest are all doing it Monday to Friday, that's an easy way for costs to slip and timescales to slip. And again, it's just not easy. Sometimes if you got a main contractor, you've got a signed contract, everything's formal, he's going to be there at a certain length of time. Yeah, it can be different when friends are doing it, coming together. It can be a bit more relaxed, sometimes too relaxed. Doesn't always end up as a slickest project that will run the budget when you're doing it, or ironically, you might think it would be.
So I guess John's actually come in with a question that's very similar to what we're just talking about there. Is, you know, do lenders insist on a main contractor to do the build? And probably the answer to that is they prefer it. Is that right? Or
I would say they prefer it. I guess we're building a file to go to a lender. You've got one main contractor. There might be a couple of small subbies round about that. Again, if you've got 5 or 6 different guys or girls coming together to build the project, you look for one architect to sign it all off. Again, even for presenting the file, before we got anywhere near the drawdown stages, you can be chasing 5 or 6 different contractors, you know, chasing them around the email, getting these costs in, and you know, they've all got to be done to a certain amount of detail. I won't say I've ever seen it done in the back of a flag packet, but some guys were more organised for putting their figures together than some other ones, you know. So yeah. There doesn't have to be one main contractor now.
I think ultimately, yeah, the temptation's there, but sometimes if you have your trade yourself, you know, sometimes it's best to take a step back and, you know, project manage it and throw your passion into the driving the project forward rather than getting stuck in yourself. But you know, it's easy to say that, but clearly, you know, times are tough, and money is tight, and sometimes it is a case of trying to do as much as you can yourself, but make sure it's certified and you keep on the right side of the lender, I guess.
Yeah, it's about, again, nothing wrong with doing it yourself or being hands-on yourself. One thing that almost nobody ever thinks about is actually, because they'll insure the materials, insure the site. Very rare that I get somebody asking me about getting some sort of key man cover in place to insure themselves. Because people do fall off ladders on day 2 of a project, and they've just made it self-fit because you're on the cheaper rate. Suddenly you got to get a contractor in, and clearly they'll be in for a different price if we're doing it yourself. So again, it's just thinking about pros and cons of each different step there, really.
Yeah. No. We've had a few questions come in, and I'm just going to fire them up on the screen. So we've had a question from Jody. Jody's asking, is it a bad time to apply for a mortgage due to COVID and economic situation? We touched on this earlier on, but perhaps, is it a bad time? Is there any kind of products out there that have stopped? Is there any ones that have had, let's say, less desirable terms applied, or any other restrictions?
Yeah, not really. There was, let's say, I'm not really going to mention any lenders here down for different reasons. Let's say that would be seen to be almost implying one's better than another one. There was one of the major self-build lenders that just came out of the market for about 6 weeks. I don't know, was that just to do with resource or working remotely? But they're back in now. The rates haven't really changed any. I suppose the only thing you'd have to keep in mind, but this is the same for a standard mortgage anyway, is if you're on furlough until they've got the bank's got a letter from your employer, saying you're going to go back tomorrow, 1st of July, whenever it's going to be, the lender will only assess you on your furloughed income, if you like. Self-employed people, again, across the board, it's going to be time will just tell how lenders view self-employed people. If this has been a bad year, and they'll go back to normal next year. But I wouldn't say it's been catastrophic for self-build applications. Probably less of them just now, but there's no reason why it should prevent anybody.
In terms of comparing mortgages, again, Jody's come in with a question about, is there a tool available to compare mortgages? I mean, you've got the mortgage brokers, but almost like you're purchasing your utilities. Is there a way of being able to do a bit of groundwork yourself? Because that actually can help to smooth the whole process once you're actually engaging with either a mortgage provider or a broker. It's the way that we seem to be going our ways is becoming very online orientated, and there's a lot of information online, which is a great thing to do. Sometimes it's not the best information, or sometimes it's wrong, but sometimes it's good to be aware so you know the right questions to ask. But is there a mortgage comparison website?
There's probably quite a few. I would generally be wary about self-builds relying on an off-the-shelf, kind of program for self-builds. For part of the criteria I've already spoken about, but again, it's got to be the best price product. That's what we want for clients, without any doubt at all. But it is more of a journey. If you're just buying a standard house, again, that may just take 4 or 6 weeks. This is going to be a lender who we're going to have some interaction with, probably 6 months, 9 months. And again, this is where a broker advisor can add a bit of value, hopefully, in terms of what that journey is going to look like. So for clients in M&S, for example, if you look at some of the options that are there, for some of them, each build stage comes in, any communication, it's with a banker in M&S. With a different lender, it's somebody in Edinburgh. With somebody else, it may be having to go through a third party. And indeed, just in terms of some of the lenders we've seen in the past, communication, there's a wide variance. And for some of them, again, we hope that we don't have any blips with the developer or the project. But it's good to know you can get a quick answer back. If we're phoning a lender on the client's behalf and they can give us no idea when we're going to hear back from them, that's quite a scary position to be in if you're trying to get the build finished before Christmas time. So there are tools there. I would really hesitate hanging your hat on them for a self-build. There's a few more variables in a standard mortgage for sure.
I guess the other part of the discussions early kind of Research is about relationships. It's a long-term project. In terms of, it's not just a quick fix. It's a long-term project, and it really is about having that relationship with the mortgage provider as well, because hopefully everything goes swimmingly, but sometimes things do happen. It could be what we're living right now with the COVID, and you just don't know what's around the corner. And I can imagine that relationships go a long way towards smoothing out any kind of bumps in the road.
Yeah, and as we spoke about earlier on, Gavin, if something's changed in your circumstance and you've not told the lender, and they kind of then discover it 5-6 months down the line,
yeah,
it's going to be tricky then going back and asking for a bit more cash from them, to be honest with you. So, in terms of how we recommend a self-build provider, again, they're all different. We look at the client first of all, build, what's that house they're going to do, how they need the payments, and probably at that stage now down to 2 or 3. We've got to look at the cost for a client, absolutely. But it's definitely incumbent on us to give them some feedback on how that lender's dealt before, when there was a problem, when there was a crisis, did it get escalated, we were left hanging on the phone. So although it may appear option 1's cheaper than option 2, if option 2 is going to take twice as long to get there, then sometimes the cheapest isn't the best in any quantity.
We have a question from Anna. I'm going to throw it up on the screen. It's do lenders charge a fee for every adjustment made? So kind of along the lines of what we were talking about there, is it may be that you require additional work, additional money, or there may be other kind of adjustments required to the lending criteria. But just thinking, if I tell them every time I enter a finance deal on furniture or change part of the design, that I might have to pay the fee. So does that maybe come down to the relationships again? Is there parameters that people should think about to make sure that they don't phone up every time, or maybe it is a case that you have to phone up every time?
Yeah, no, I can't really say I've seen additional fees. I mean, again, that's where each lender is different, and some will have a fee for every stage payment if there's 5 stages. I mean, that should be built into the illustration at the start, to be honest with you. No, I've never really seen, it's certainly not across the board, put it that way. Ultimately, the lender, once they're in, they want to get that mortgage finished off, have you as a happy client who's going to stay with them for a few more years. They probably will have, I won't say the small print, but in the terms and conditions, if things go way awry and we're reading them on the phone every week, then there probably could be an exclusion where they could put an admin charge in, but it's very uncommon, to be fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is an interesting question, because you don't want to fall foul of the provider, but at the same time you want to understand exactly what the parameters are. So, but yeah, it's an interesting one. Thank you, Anna, for that question. We've also had one in from Stefan. Take it you need the land prior applying for a self-build mortgage. Do you need to own the land 100%, or could it have some finance on it?
Don't need to own the land. Again, what most lenders will look at is the overall project. So cost of the land and then cost of the build on top of it. And again, going back to the first question, or the first point we talked about, Gavin, where some people will just roll on, buy the land, get the first foundations in, and then come to the lender. It can be a smoother journey if we just approach the right lender at the start, and the lender's X amount of the land and then X amount of the build. I think intuitively people think, I'll hold on to my money, or I'll delay borrowing any money for as long as possible. And if you're just working out of a calculator, well, that would be right, because you're not borrowing in month 1, you're not borrowing to month 6 or 7. But in terms of how your cash flow has gone, and maybe having a less stressful experience, because you've still got some of your own cash left, there's no right or wrong way. You just look at all options, but it is possible to borrow on the land itself, and then just keep that pro rata, say 75%, all the way through the different stages after that.
I guess that's the good reason to be engaging a financial expert as quickly as possible, because you may have all sorts of scenarios that really affect your own self-build. So to go back to the earlier point about comparison websites, that's maybe not the right fit if you have specific circumstances that affect your overall kind of goal for this kind of project. So if you engage someone like yourselves, I guess you can kind of like, what are all the kind of provisions, what are all the commitments you have, what do you want to build, and then you can maybe come up with a scenario that meets the lending criteria opens up the choice, which I guess is crucial to make sure that you get the right lending partner on board. And yeah, if you do it early enough, then hopefully it's another stepping stone to a successful project.
Yeah, you're right, Gavin, and we've done that before for clients. We've said, look, I've got this chunk of cash here. What does it look like if I just drip feed it into the project along with the build, as opposed to what does it look like if I just buy the land and then come back and start borrowing at your build stage. And it's not too difficult to run two different cash flows for that, show them the pros and cons. But no, the process has moved on, the market's moved on since you had to have the land and come to the party for that. That's certainly not the case any longer, which is good.
Hopefully that answers your question, Stefan. Vicky's come in with another question about insurance. Should you insure for the risk of the contractor going bust? Which is a good question. It's probably something that's on the minds of everybody. It's through no fault of the contractor with COVID and just this bang, we're shut down for a few months. That can have an impact on anybody's business, and it's probably unforeseen prior to COVID happening. But is it a carte blanche kind of insurance that you can actually purchase to protect yourselves against the main contractor going bust, or perhaps any contractor that you're directly contracting with?
Yeah, again, it's probably not a question we'd had if we were doing this first week of January, I suppose. And I don't think I've never seen it anywhere on a lender's specific insurance kind of criteria. I mean, I was dealing with a chap who was looking to just buy a kind of new build house, not a self-built house from a developer. And again, he's now thinking, how safe does he feel handing over a deposit for a house won't be built for 7 or 8 months' time? So I guess it wouldn't be a sort of insurance we would deal with, probably more for a general insurer or a specialist there who could advise on that type of policy. We don't deal with that ourselves. But yeah, I don't think in today's market you can really take anything for granted. So yeah. I don't think the lender would insist on that. But yeah, is it a good idea to have it if it's affordable? Definitely is a good idea.
Yeah. Again, hopefully that answers your question, Vicky. Thanks again for your question. We have another one in from God. There's so many questions. I'm trying to screen them first, but they're coming in thick and fast. So bear with me. Just thinking to keep my. So here's one from Anna. I'm just thinking that if I'm going to keep my lender in the loop when I enter new financial deals for furniture or make a change to. Oh, I think we've already answered that one, haven't we? Or have we? When I enter new financial deals for furniture or make a change to my design, I might have to pay. Yeah, we did answer that one. Sorry, Anna.
I've never seen a fee charged for that, but yeah, definitely keep in touch with them.
Yeah, no problem. Paulette, thanks for your question. Is there any mortgages with no proof of income? I do own a property with a small mortgage, and I do own the land I want to build on. So, is there a mortgage with no proof of income?
This is probably the one question I can answer in black and white, Gavin, rather than the shades of grey, as most of it's been up to now. Unfortunately, there isn't. I think there's a bounce back loan been reintroduced a couple of months ago, and that's probably the only sort of self-certification lending which is about these days. So, no, way back in my early career of dealing with mortgages and self-builds, it was possible to get a self-build, but that was kind of killed off at the 07-08 crash. I wouldn't expect that to come back anytime shortly, to be honest with you.
And if there was, I guess it would be more pricier in terms of interest rate. Would that be a fair comment? Or
yeah, I think it would be more pricey. You'd be looking at lower loan to value than you could get if you can pay income. But I just think the whole climate at the moment, even before COVID, again, lenders under more rules up above them to be responsible lenders, and that's why they'll go in such great detail about somebody with credit cards, buy now, pay later, that whole thing. I don't think it's the banks necessarily choosing to go down that route, but I wouldn't expect self-cert to come back.
Yeah. Okay, great. Hopefully that answers your question, Paulette. Calvin's come in with a question about crofting grants. So we've just secured a crofting grant to build on our croft. Do you have any tips for securing a mortgage for crofters? Is it more difficult? We'll be decrofting the house site.
Yeah, definitely more difficult. I have not done one myself, although a very reliable source of mine in Inverness did allude to me just a few weeks ago, actually, that he had come up with one lender who would entertain building on crofted land. Calvin, if you get in touch with me, I will be very interested myself to see how that develops. I actually did remember speaking to the guy and saying I would love to have a little test case to take to him. In the main, from security-wise, lenders couldn't really take proper title over a croft, so it really kind of cat-eyed it from the person who owned the croft being able to put a house on it, and then in turn, how could they sell it on if the new purchaser couldn't get title over it? You were kind of stymied. So, but yeah, somebody's told me there is a way somewhere.
Good. It's probably worth saying at this point that you're being fired questions. You're answering them quite succinctly and very well, in my opinion. But obviously, this is all kind of your quick answers. There's obviously a lot more behind this, so just to put that little caveat there. So, okay, good. Chris has come in. He's got a question. Do you need build plans to go for the mortgage, or is it a basic floor? Is a basic floor plan enough? How do they value the build?
You would certainly be able to get, I guess you call it an agreement in principle, on the more basic floor plans. Again, as far as the lenders go, they're just looking at numbers, first of all. What's the income? What's the loan to value going to be? How does it fit within our self-build criteria? To me, it's all kind of shadow boxing, really, until you've got costed plans, plan permission, lending on to building warrant. So yeah, to answer the question, you could get a mortgage approved. I always get a little bit nervous, when people have got that early stage approval still to go back and put the flesh and the bones of it, because I just fear sometimes people take that agreement in principle as a bit of paper. I think, right, boom, I'm home and hosed here. The next you hear from them, 6 months later, they've started at their own cash, and what they're actually taking back the Party has more depth. It's not quite what we appear to be looking at. So I think for Chris or anybody else, no problem at all. You can get an overview from a lender, but I would still have a bit of caution. Don't hang your hat on that until you've really got the full comprehensive costs in front of you.
Yeah, I guess that applies to any purchase, not just self-build, but I guess it's the temptation is there to do some budgetary kind of discussions with a mortgage lender, but then you get excited and you go off to the market and you think, I'm just going to sink my hands into a house build, or even just a brand new house or a used house. But again, everything can change, and it's not even just down to your circumstance. It could be the lender's criteria as well. So it really is a case of just keeping the lenders informed, keeping the broker informed, and just taking them along on the journey to make sure that you're on the right path. And Stefan's come back. He's going to grab a coffee with you. So thanks for clearing up his question.
Just one sugar, Stefan.
You never try to ask for the coffee. Antoinette's come back. Do some lenders have a time limit for the self-build borrowing before it gets converted into a mortgage?
That's a very good question from an ex-banker there, Antoinette. You're trying to catch me out. I would say in the general it's 12 months. I have seen a couple of projects gone beyond that, and it wasn't really through fault of anybody's. I've never really seen anybody being hit horrendously hard by it. But I suppose what I would say is the interest rate during the build stage will never really be as expensive as the end mortgage you go on to. So I wouldn't say there's a time limit on it. I mean, if it's not been finished after 12 months, they're not going to take the keys over. It's going to be in the client's own interest as well to get off that rate onto a better end mortgage rate. So yeah, again, communication. We've mentioned that a few times before, haven't we?
Yeah.
I think if you try out to lender, look, it's been a bad winter. The contractor broke his leg, whatever it may be. I think if you can manage it, put it through a broker or going yourself, that's going to have a better outcome. To some extent, it depends which lender you're with. And again, we've talked before. There's some lenders are more amenable to a chat and good communication in a collegiate manner through the build stage. Some not so flexible.
Okay, Antoinette, hopefully that answers your question. We have another one in from Monica, are you grabbing a drink whilst you're actually answering all these questions, or still coming in thick and fast? Hopefully we'll be able to get through them all before we close off at 8 o'clock. But so Monica's asking, if due to material changes or change to property structure, current lender is not happy to continue sponsoring the next stages of the self-build, what alternatives does the applicant have? That's a good question. Yeah, so.
Yeah, well, that would be kind of jumping horse halfway through the race, which isn't to be recommended. That if lender simply says, look, this is no longer fits our parameters, and that's what you've got to do. I can think of 2 occasions like that, probably the last few years. It's not pretty, but it can be done, because a half-built house is no use to nobody, really. Again, while I say a lot of lenders are different, I mean, the basic sign-offs they would have it the same. I think really what you need to do there is obviously look to a new lender, say, here's our income, here's our commitments, yeah, we fit the bill, type of house is going to fit the bill. You're really having to take that file, hopefully with proper sign-offs all the way through for the first lender, and get that in front of the second lender. I would say that's where, you know, relationships with a lender are key there. So obviously customer might have relationships with a lender, but I think for a broker, that's where we really have to earn our corn and get somebody to take a view on the thing. So not easy, but not impossible, to be fair.
And I guess if you're in that position, I can imagine it's actually quite an attractive position for a lender to come in and perhaps be a bit cute in terms of an interest rate that they're going to apply to the project, because you are in a sticky wicket in terms of moving. And I guess
yeah, I've actually never really seen that. I've never seen the lender take advantage.
Okay, good.
I've seen some mortgage brokers take advantage. I'll name no names as we're in the Sabbath, but yeah, I've never seen lenders really been ridiculous. But it's a tricky situation. It's just trying to get things back on track again, really, at that point, you know.
Yeah, as I say, things do happen, and it's about how you actually manage it and keeping the experts alongside you so that you can actually, you're not dealing with it on your own. You're actually reaching into the knowledge pool to make sure that you actually make the right decision. Thanks, Monica. Derek's come on with a question about the Croft House grant scheme. Does receiving the Croft House grant scheme have any implications on you achieving a self-build mortgage?
Right, I might need to throw that one offline this week, because in the previous one, let's say, I've never myself seen a Croft one get going. So if that new option that was told just about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, is a goer, then that question would be pertinent there. I mean, if you'd received a grant, then decrofted the property. Again, I'm not a crofting expert, so I'm not sure what happened with that. If the crofting grant would have had to get repaid when you decrofted the house, I suppose.
Is there associations that can perhaps Derek can reach out to as well? Is there specialists that actually deal with the grant scheme and anything else that might be related to it?
Well, yeah, I mean, Derek, if you drop me a line or whatever, I'll certainly put you in touch with the guy who spoke to me about the case. I mean, there's certainly solicitors within Munro Noble who have crofting experience. It is quite a niche, it's a niche area. So yeah, more than happy to follow up on that for sure.
Thanks, Derek. We have a question from Finlay. Do most self-build lenders insist on the completed property being occupied as the borrower's primary residence? So if the property is to be used for a holiday letting, second home, it could be in, I don't know, I guess West Coast or wherever. How does that actually impact the lending criteria?
Yeah. I mean, from the, let's say, 9 or 10 lenders that are in the marketplace, they're just interested in self-build of somebody's own home. You mentioned the West Coast again. How many properties up and down the West Coast where done as self-build, and there's something more going on than a residential house, probably quite a high percentage. But really, the self-build options there are for somebody building their own house just to live in. If you are looking for a build to either have as your own home with a holiday letting attached to it, you're probably getting away from really strict self-builds. There's only really one lender I've got in my repertoire who are based in the Highlands, actually, who would entertain it's almost merging copy and tea, if you like. For most of the self-build lenders, just your own home's what they want to do. there's certainly ways to get a build for a semi-commercial property, but again, that's not self-build, that's more specialist lenders, mainly higher interest rates, higher deposits needed.
Okay, good. Thanks, Finlay. Question from Ken. A lot of timber framed kit suppliers around now. What's the current appetite from resi lenders on this type of construction?
As long as the property is mortgageable, it should absolutely be possible to get a mortgage on it from a self-build provider. It's going beyond the scope of what we've got time for today, but I mean, the more or less traditional build construction types, where a lot of it's going to get prefabricated, pre-made off-site, that does get kind of again probably differentiate some mortgage providers out there, where some will pay in arrears. So for more traditional construction, there's the contractors will do work for a month, we get some money back out of the lender at the end of the month. For some other ones, and I've seen a lot of timber framed kit going this way, it's a shorter build period that the supplier wants money up front. So again, to one of the earlier questions in terms of kind of portals, that's where it can be a bit more difficult to really reach in to get that lender's criteria. So there are ways to do it, Ken, absolutely. It's just going to mean some lenders who maybe are more visible onto the high street, they won't be the people to go to for that type of project.
On that theme, I mean, is there anything else that actually causes a problem for self-build mortgages? For example, is there any restricted types of construction that just self-build mortgage providers just will not touch?
I've never really seen any, to be honest with you, Gavin. I'd say there's some more specialists than other ones. So if people are showing me designs, apart from the numbers, that it's got a flat roof or a lot of glass coming or whatever, intuitively I'm probably narrowing it down. Won't be right for that 2 or 3 lenders there. It'll be more, it's really just picking your targets. Lenders are absolutely entitled to decide what sort of houses they like and don't like. Whether it makes sense to people like me or clients and all that's regardless. Something doesn't make sense to some developers sometimes. It's horses for courses.
Yeah. All right, so we've got 5 minutes to go. Just going to wrap up. So just, I guess, some takeaways, Hamish, if you wouldn't mind. So if people are on the call and considering a self-build, perhaps they're in the middle of the self-build, or looking at the end kind of self-build, converting the self-build mortgage into the longer-term mortgage, is there any takeaways that you would offer?
I think just to recap, look before you leap. If you're having a cool calm chat with an advisor or a bank or going online, much better doing it at the very start, trying to plot out what that journey is going to look like. There are things that can go wrong with a self-build, with the contractor, with land, whatever it is, that can just happen. But it's almost unforced errors, if you like, where you've got the money for the land, you've taken the first 2-3 stages down the way, and then we're finding we don't quite fit into that lender's criteria. That's where things get really nervous. So preparation at the start, and then I think communication through the build. If somebody's going to change, shout out early as possible, and there's more likely a way to manage it. And keep options open. You don't have to go through a broker. I think obviously we've done a lot of self builds. I think with all that's happened the last 2-3 months, for some brokers, Gavin, self build is not their bag. They may want to more align with traditional houses, help to buys. They might want to be working closely with an established builder. I probably do think that some brokers, and I say this is their choice how to view the market. They haven't really been attracted to self-builds before. I wonder if now some brokers out there will just have a go at self-build. Especially a bigger one for a bigger fee involved. I think clients, members of the public, are more than entitled to just query the broker a little bit. How many self-builds have you done in the past? I wouldn't want to be somebody's guinea pig if I'm not been near a self-build for 5 years, that they're going to kind of learn on my ticket, if you like. So I think you're more, the broker will ask you a lot of questions. Nothing wrong with asking the broker some questions as well.
Yeah, I think it's buyer beware almost, isn't it? I mean, it's again this whole online culture that we're in now. There's information available online, so you can do your checks, you can ask around, to say, have you got any kind of referrals you can speak to, make sure that you do your research. So
Yeah,
All
for
right,
sure.
great. Well, thank you very much, Hamish. It's been very, very useful. We've had a lot of questions in, very, very specific questions. How do people get in touch with you if they want to talk to you offline?
Yeah, you'll find in the Munro Noble kind of website. We're based in Inverness, but I've got clients all over done self-help projects, everywhere from Aberdeen, Orkney, Skye down to Open direction. So Munro Noble website. I'm on LinkedIn. Probably good for some business chat on there as well. So yeah, drop us a line. I think the mobile or the office number is down the bottom there in the little scheme going across. So yeah, more than happy to speak to anybody. No commitment. Just have a chat, folks. If it engages, and great. If it's more light touch stuff you need, then yeah, happy with that. No problem.
Great, thank you. So yep, that's us coming to a wrap. We are back in a couple of weeks' time. We have Black Isle Renewables, a neighbour of yours, Hamish.
Yeah.
Kelly Tad will be online talking about heat pumps. We've actually got some footage from Black Isle Renewables. They attended our Scottish Self-Build Renovation event up in Inverness. I'm just going to fire them up on the screen because they're a very fine bunch of people.
Hi, we're Black Isle Renewables. We're based in Dingwall. We specialise in the installation of air source and ground source heat pumps. We also do servicing of heat pumps as well. It's been amazing. It's been so busy. We've talked to people with doing lots of new projects, people who are renovating houses, all sorts. Real range of people. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, it's been really good. It's been so, but we just can't talk fast enough.
So they're joining us in a couple of weeks, and we look forward to that. So if anyone's in the planning stages, trying to understand exactly how they're going to heat, how they're going to cool their property, then that's one to listen into. So 7 o'clock on the 12th of July, I think it is. So thank you very much, Hamish, again.
No, pleasure.
We hope that's been of interest to a lot of people, and yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Okay, thank you. Cheers.